thought things were going to get a little bit easier as we moved along in this book. And the part that we cover today isn't any more complicated, but it's emotionally tough. Our authors are about to get testy. Hi there, I'm Linda Maxey, the author of the Library Lend Guides to Great Nonfiction Books. We've been making our way chapter by chapter through How to Read a Book, the Classic Guide to Intelligent Reading by Mortimer J. Adler and Charles Van Doren. We've covered the 4 stages of reading. I have videos in the playlist below that will walk you through all of those. Most of the book covers the 3rd stage, analytical reading. They divide this stage into 3 sub-stages with 12 rules to follow. I've got videos that cover those as well. The chapter we're going to cover today wraps up the discussion that began in chapter 10, How to Criticize a Book Fairly. In that chapter, they talk about intellectual etiquette. No one is going to fuss at you if you don't follow intellectual etiquette. That is, unless you write a book review for publication or discuss the book at a symposium or something for people who are well educated on the topic. But if you don't follow this etiquette, no matter what, you cannot pat yourself on the back for a job well done once you've finished a book. To put it in a nutshell, if you followed all these steps and rules for reading a book up to this point and you've done your job well, you should be in a position to say either A, you agree with the book, B, you disagree with the book, or C, you are withholding judgment. To do that, you really need to understand the author's arguments to make their case and the propositions that they use to hold up those arguments. To do even this amount of work, you need to maintain an open mind and truly consider what the author is saying. It's not enough just to say, I don't like the argument because it challenges the way I see the world. No. If the author's arguments are based on facts and are logically sound, if you're an honest person, you must agree with what the author is saying. Of course, sometimes authors don't have their facts right for any number of reasons. They may not have access to information that you do, or they may have misunderstood what information they did have. Or they could be writing propaganda. It's good to figure this out so that you know what you're dealing with. For information about intellectual etiquette, see my last video in the series. It will be linked at the end of this one. But in this chapter, they get into when and how it's okay to agree and disagree with the author. And as I said in the introduction, they have some harsh things to say about well-meaning readers. First, let's look at their discussion of agreement and disagreement. As always, they cover a lot more in this chapter than I'm able to do in a short video. I'm just trying to get across their most important ideas here. All right, first off, you can only disagree with an author if you can prove them wrong on one of their points. Merely voicing your opinions or sticking to your prejudices isn't acceptable here, and we all have prejudices. You must have proof that you're right and the author is wrong. And you must be able to state this proof in a way that would make sense to any reasonable person. And finally, you must be able to state your disagreement in an agreeable manner. You can't just call the other person an ugly name that indicates they lack intelligence. You must assume that they are presenting their argument in good faith and that they may be right on some points. Adler and Van Doren believe that if, after understanding the author and disagreeing because you have more complete information or more faultless logic, there are 4 different responses to an author that are acceptable. And here they are. Number 1, you can say to the author, you are uninformed. Number 2, you are misinformed. Number 3, you are illogical. Your reasoning is not cogent, and by that they mean not valid or powerful. Or number 4, your analysis is incomplete. Now, in the first case, you're saying the author doesn't have some of the information that you have. In the second, you're saying that the author is using information that can be or has been proven inaccurate. And the third says the information is sound, but the way the author presents it is not. These first 3 responses refer to the soundness of the author's information and thought processes regarding it. Now, before moving on to the 4th possible response, Adler and Van Doren say that if you cannot find fault with any of these first 3, the author's information or reasoning, then you must agree with the author up to that point. Only if you find an issue with the 4th is it okay to do anything other than agree with the author. Now on to the 4th response. The analysis is incomplete. If you say this, you must mean that the author hasn't solved all the problems that they set forth in the book, or that the information used was not used up to its potential. You cannot say the information in this book is incomplete, because they say it is literally impossible to write a book that is not incomplete in some sense. No, if you say the analysis is incomplete, it means that given the information the author has provided, the author should have come up with a better argument or found more satisfactory solutions to the problems they examined. They say if you find this is the case with the book you read, you're still not free to disagree with the author's judgment. Instead, the proper response to this failure is to suspend judgment. You've already agreed with the author's information and logical reasoning because they didn't go as far as you determined they should have. Your only possible choice is to suspend judgment. Now, I found this a pretty easy chapter to understand. They give 3 tests over which you can agree or disagree, and failing that, you can still suspend judgment if you find fault. Of course, there are many shades of possibility for error on both your side and the author's that they discuss, but I'm not going to talk about those here. You can read the book if you want more precise instructions. But what I've just described gets to the crux of their discussion on the topic of criticism. Here are the rules for criticism. General maxims of intellectual etiquette. Do not begin criticism until you have completed your outline and your interpretation of the book. Do not say you agree, disagree, or suspend judgment until you can say, I understand. Number 10, do not disagree disputatiously or contentiously. Number 11, demonstrate that you recognize the difference between knowledge and mere personal opinion by presenting good reasons for any critical judgment you make. Moving on to B, special criteria for points of criticism. Number 12, show wherein the author is uninformed. Number 13, show wherein the author is misinformed. Number 14, show wherein the author is illogical. Or 15, show wherein the author's analysis or account is incomplete. Note, of these last 4, the first 3 are criteria for disagreement. Failing in all these, you must agree, at least in part, although you may suspend judgment on the whole in light of the last point. Now I'm going to talk about how they took me to the intellectual woodshed. They do soften their blow a bit by saying that what they're describing in this book is the ideal way to read. Not many people actually do this, and they say that they themselves rarely do, and that's a relief. Because here's the real kicker. In their opinion, a person who reads a lot of books but doesn't read the way they describe in this book is not a well-read person at all. They say a person who has read 2 or 3 really good books and applied all these rules and comes to an informed understanding of the contents is actually a better read person than one who has read thousands of books without following these methods. I mean, really, ouch, that hurts. I read to be informed. Obviously, to me now, I'm not well read according to their criteria, and I probably have read to understand very little, because to them, that's the best reason to read, to understand. Information is cheap. Without understanding, it changes very little. So what do you think about that? Do you read deeply and thoughtfully and have a real meeting of the minds with the author? They admit that not all books, and I'd say probably most books, don't even deserve to be read this way. But have you ever read a book that required that sort of effort? Please leave a comment below and let me know of any books like this you've read. The next chapter we cover in this book is chapter 12, Aids to Reading. Since this was written in 1972, I'll try to find sources online to demonstrate the helps they will no doubt discuss. And until next time, happy reading.